online via the YouTube live stream, just so that you guys know this is being live streamed. So if you're taking pictures on Instagram, Facebook status, Twitter, all of that good stuff, use the hashtag ThriveMA or hashtag HowWeThrive. The signs are all outside, but yeah, so please hashtag this and get the word out and show your empowerment. But before we officially kick off this conference with the speaking program, I wanted to take a minute to introduce a few of the awesome fellow streamers who have helped make the Thrive program so successful and the community that it is today. And that would be Lisa Soroy, who is the Director of Youth Transition Services at East Central Massachusetts. A lot of you probably came across her as you were checking in. And then, of course, Colleen Flanagan, who all of you probably already know. Colleen is the Youth Services Coordinator. And then, of course, Jenny Forty, the Youth Services Manager. So, please join me in giving them all a hoop and holler round of applause because they are awesome. So, I'll admit that, one of my favorite parts of this conference is that later on I get to tell the guys to get the heck out of here. Because this is a women's conference. But, all kidding aside, I will say that, in my 3 years of having done this, my favorite part of this conference is by far getting to know the incredible spectrum and diversity of women with disabilities. If you look around the room, some of you are physicians, researchers, directors of organizations. You're going to hear from a whole range of people, wives, girlfriends, mothers, Paralympians, beauty pageant winners, high school students, folks who are getting ready for college. So there's a whole range, and I hope that everyone will take a chance to introduce themselves to somebody that they haven't met before or don't know yet, because there's just a wealth of diversity here, and there's just so much to learn from one another. Despite all of the different things that we are and all the different hats that we wear in our day-to-day lives, the one thing that really bonds us together is that we are all empowering women with disabilities. We're all here to continue breaking stereotypes and pushing boundaries and encouraging others to find leadership and mentorship and community and resources. So I actually wanted to introduce an art project that might better illustrate the point I'm trying to make. So it's two lovely volunteers here, Lydia and Michelle. So they are actually holding up an art project that many of the mentees and mentors have been working on for the past couple of months. I've asked them to fill in the blank of I thrive because I am blank. So a lot of them chose different words like strong, flawless. We have brave, determined, love, fighter, persistent. The mentees and mentors were all assigned a different color, and they were all asked to decorate a tile. And you'll notice that the tiles are made up of different components of art materials. But if you look closely, you might see the outline of the East Central Thrive program logo when you put all of the pieces together. And I'm going to encourage everyone to check out the art project. Throughout the conference, it'll be available for you to check out. You can also get me touch it as well. It'll be housed at the East Central Massachusetts Boston office. So, if you're ever in the area, swing by. I think it's really awesome, and I think the mentees and mentors who worked on this should all be really proud of being part of this community and this project. So, now that the mentees and mentors and a lot of the folks in this room have showed how they think they thrive and what empowerment means, now it's all of our turn to do the same thing. So, if you look in your red folders, everybody's going to be doing this, I believe. And you'll see that you'll have a card stop that says an empowered woman is we're also going to be passing out markers and pens to help folks with this. So in a minute, Eric and other folks are going to be handing out markers and pens. But I want you to really think about, what this conference is going to be about, some of the speakers that you'll hear. Think about yourselves as young women with disabilities and what empowerment is, and think about why it's important that you're a part of this community. Because we're all going to fill in the blank, and then I'm going to ask people to go around and share the word that they've written. So Eric is going to hand out markers in a minute. And then I'm going to give you a couple minutes to do that. Yeah.
Here you go.
Yes, I already have mine. Pens and markers should be going around.
Picture of that.
It's just supposed to be one letter, and then they write out right. You can write it for Where are they? Yeah, I can see it. They're more on there? Yes.
Ladies over here.
Yes. That's smart idea.
Has everybody gotten a pen?
Oh, I think you know. Well, what do you think about what's the word that helps first? What's the first word that helps? When you look
using live stream. Just like thinking live stream. So if you're taking. Thank you for that. All of a sudden, I was like, I'm the only candy in the room. So I'm going to give folks another minute to write down a word. And then get back in our seats. Okay, so you can either hold up your sign, say the word or phrase that you've written down. I'll start. So I wrote down that an empowered woman is me, tenacious. Okay. So who wants to go next?
Me.
All right.
An empowered woman is someone who never lets anything get in their way and stands up for what they believe.
And just a reminder, you're not to speak up because we want everybody to be able to hear your words. Also, we want a speaker that it picks up for the live stream. There he is. Anyone go next?
An empowered woman is sad. I like it.
Can everybody hear me?
Yeah.
Can you move right in the speaker? An empowered woman is wild, smart, funny, and intelligent. Alright, next. I think we can just go right around the room. My word is sweet and happy. Our woman is innovative. Woman is brave.
An empowered woman is determined and strong.
Amazing.
An empowered woman is fearless.
What? Confident.
Strong and independent. Courageous. An empowered woman is confident.
An empowered woman is strong, confident, and sometimes demanding.
An empowered woman is getting out of your comfort zone. An empowered woman is beautiful inside and out.
An empowered woman is a force to be reckoned with. empowered woman is determined. Empowered woman is adaptable.
Empowered woman is confident.
Empowered woman is unapologetic.
An empowered woman is beautiful.
An empowered woman is a warrior. An empowered woman is one that lives her dream. An empowered woman is brave, strong, and loud.
An empowered woman is someone who never lets anything get in their way and stands up for what they believe in.
Strong.
An empowered woman is savvy.
And, strong and brave.
Okay, thanks.
An empowered woman is sexy.
An empowered woman is not afraid to say what she wants. An empowered woman is resilient.
An empowered woman is brave and knows herself.
An empowered woman is smart.
Awesome, that was really impressive. And I just hope that all of you will keep these cards stuff in your folders throughout the conference. Because as we're going through the conference and throughout the day, we're going to hear from a wide variety of speakers. And so, it's the idea that we don't always know what empowerment is or what it means to thrive, and that's totally okay, because we don't need to make that decision right here, right now. The whole process is a learning process, and it's going to change throughout the day as we get older. So we will be doing this activity again at the end of the conference tomorrow. So you never know, maybe your work might change. It might stay the same, but we'll find out. So our next speaker, our first speaker actually, is Dr. Cheri Blauwet, and she is our keynote speaker, and I'm honored to have her here with us today. Dr. Blauwet can be described as a Paralympic athlete, physician, marathoner, wife, and all-around barrier breaker. Off the track and field, Dr. Blauwet completed her medical education from Stanford Medical School, and in 2004 won the Paul Hearn Leadership Award from the American Association of People with Disabilities. Currently, Dr. Blauwet is an attending physician of physical medicine and rehabilitation at Spalding Rehab and the Brigham Women's Hospital. So, everybody, in a round of applause for Dr. Cheri Blauwet.
All right. Good morning, everyone. Is this working? Can you all hear me okay? Okay, good. So I can't explain. It's really exciting for me to be here with you today. Thank you so much to Sandy and Desi and Colleen and the team for inviting me to join you to talk a little bit about what empowerment has meant to me in my life. Understanding, of course, that it's different for everyone, and we all have different interests and goals and dreams, and what matters is, of course, is that we're able to make our own goals, make our own plan for life and implement it and be successful in that. So I'm going to talk a little bit about my life and my career, which has been focused around the themes of sports and physical activity, and also being a doctor. And talk a little bit about how I got there to reach my goals, but understanding, of course, that you might not be into sports and that's okay. You might have no interest in medicine, and that's okay. But whatever it is that you love and you're passionate about, you should be able to, of course, seek out and find in life. So a little bit, I'm going to talk, for about hopefully a half hour, but I definitely want to leave time for Q&A also. And I also brought a little bit of bling to show you as well from the standpoint of Paralympic sports. So I want to leave time for all of that too. Okay, does that sound good? Yeah. Good. So kind of an overview for this morning, I'd like to talk a little bit about my own journey towards empowerment, what it was like for me when I was young, going through my teenage years and then into being a young adult, and kind of some of the experiences that I had along the way. I'm going to talk about my discovery of sports and physical activity, which was something that was very important to me and very empowering to me. I'm going to talk about transitioning that into a career in medicine, which is what I do now. I practice, as Sandy so kindly said, at Spalding and Brigham, and focus a lot on physical activity, sports, and also the disability community. And then talk a little bit about how something, like these opportunities really can transform all of us, both at the individual level, but also in terms of society and how society thinks about disability, which is, of course, really important. And throughout, I want to focus on two key themes. And the first one is certainly the importance of female mentors and women in mentorship. Certainly something that's really important to us here today at Thrive, and really why we're all here. It's very important, I think, to have something to aspire to and to be able to know and see people who have come before you who have achieved their own goals. It's hard to set a dream, I think, until you know it can be possible and know it exists. And so, thinking about women in our lives, women mentors, is really important for everyone. And then I want to talk about the theme of, I have a slogan, and I call it no breaks. And to me, it kind of has a purposeful dual meaning. I defined it when I was competing a lot in Paralympic sport and when talking to communities about what that meant to me as a person with disability. And to me, this slogan of no breaks at the individual level means that I don't want society to place expectations on me, but rather I want to be self-determined and determine my own path in life. And so we can use the term of breaks as thinking about like breaks on a wheelchair, knowing that certainly I have them, many of you probably have them. They're useful at certain points in time, but we should be the ones to determine when we want to apply them or use them and not hold ourselves back at all. And then at the societal level, no breaks, I think, has a really important meaning. If you think about it, it's spelled B-R-E-A-K-S. And thinking about that we don't want anyone to lower their expectations of us. We want people to keep those expectations high, expect big things of us, and then empower us to achieve those goals. We don't want breaks in life. We want to be empowered and successful and have accommodations and accessible environments in order to do that. So I really like that phrase, no breaks, and I'm going to bring that home today too. So when I think about my early life, so actually I'm not from Massachusetts originally, I'm a Midwest kid, and I grew up on a farm in Iowa. And I know that. I've been to Iowa, because yeah, there you go. Yes, Stacy. So I grew up on a farm, and I acquired a disability at a young age. I acquired a spinal cord injury in a farming accident when I was 16 months, actually. So I don't remember it at all, and my earliest memories are being a person with a disability. But because I was in a fairly rural part of the U.S., there weren't a lot of other young people with disabilities in my immediate environment. In fact, there were almost none. And so for that reason, my experience was somewhat normalized, and really, when I was a kid, I just had this mindset of doing what I needed to do just to keep up, just to be a kid. And that was from playing with friends outside on the farm to then going to elementary school and then into high school. It's a good example of that. During the high school football games, sometimes I would actually crawl and scoot up the bleachers to sit on the top of the bleachers because that's where all my friends wanted to sit. And I didn't think anything of it. I didn't think that might be disempowering or abnormal. I just did what I needed to do in order to be there. And so in many ways, I think that was very formative, very formative to me of my youth. That said, because of that as well, I also do have other female mentors around me, or even any mentors around me as people with disabilities. And so I always certainly felt a little bit different. I think my confidence was not where it could have been or as good as it could have been. Because anytime I went to any environment in school, in extracurricular activities, wherever it might be, I never truly felt like people had the exact same life experience or could relate in that way. And just simply chat about some of the challenges that we do all face. Not every day is perfect. There are many frustrating days for whatever reason. And so I always, although I didn't know it, I think I very much craved having peers to talk to and to share some of those stories. So when I started into elementary school, you know, I very distinctly remember my parents having to instill those themes of no breaks very early on, even with some of the teachers, for example, at school, because there certainly was a tendency, you know, I was one of the first wheelchair users to have gone through that public school. And there was certainly a tendency for them to create, you know, special circumstances or make it a little bit easier for me. I remember one example was when I was, I don't know, young, maybe kindergarten or first grade. I developed the habit of, we would finish an assignment and I would hand my assignment to the person in the desk next to me to hand in for me, instead of getting into my chair, wheeling up to the teacher's desk and handing it in myself. And my parents caught wind of that, and I distinctly remember them talking to the teacher about it and saying, you know, actually that's not okay. She needs to, if she can do it, she needs to do the same things as her peers. And so just an example of early on how those expectations were kind of set along the way. As I was going through elementary and junior high, I remember a phrase that I would hear often from teachers, people in the community, that was in some ways not the best, but I didn't really know it at the time. And I remember whenever we would talk about questions like, you know, well, what do you want to be when you grow up? You know, what's your goal? People would often say, well, Cheri, you know, you should do the things that you could be good at. And I would say, okay. When I was young, I didn't think anything of it. That made sense to me. So I had, you know, visions of you know, doing something more office-based, potentially. You know, maybe it would be, you know, working in office-based environment in whatever capacity. But I didn't realize at the time that they were sort of like subtly stigmatizing me in a way, and saying, well, you know, really you should focus in on the things that people like you can do well. And so in many ways along the way, I started to normalize that myself. I had gotten involved in, you know, things like band. I played clarinet and piano and choir and student council. So, you know, and I certainly was a very self-proclaimed nerd. But, you know, nerds are awesome, and I still am. So but I had sort of self-stigmatized myself in a way into doing things that I know didn't require any physical ability or skill, but rather were based on, you know, sitting at a desk, talking, making decisions. All of those were extremely powerful and positive things in my life, but I never actually thought that I could be physically empowered. And all of that changed actually in 8th grade into 9th grade, when one of our coaches at the high school discovered that there was a sport called wheelchair racing. And he approached me in high school, actually, found me in the hallway. I still remember the moment. He tapped me on the shoulder and he said, Cheri, you know, there's this thing called wheelchair racing, and this sport, you know, I know nothing about it, but you should come out for the team next year and be on the track team. And as you can imagine, I thought he was crazy. I thought he had lost it. I was like, why? No, I'm busy. I have plenty of things going on. I'm not an athlete. I don't need something like sports. So I initially completely shut the idea out. And I think a lot of it was because I knew that doing that would make me stand out and make me, yet again, even more different than my peers. And I craved the opposite. I craved to be more like my peers. So I blew him off. I kept ignoring him in the hallway. He kept bringing it up. And I started to see him. I'd go in the other direction and like dodge him because I didn't want to talk about it. And that was all through 8th grade. But then the next year, when track season came around when I was a freshman in high school, the pressure kind of kept building and building, and he kept talking to me about it. It was a small community, so I didn't know, but he had also talked to my parents about it, and then they brought it up at home, and it was just relentless. So finally, when they announced the first day of track practice my freshman year of high school, I rolled into our high school gym and got a uniform and joined the track team. And I was really embarrassed about it, to be perfectly honest. I really wasn't looking forward to it at all. So track season started. It was March in Iowa. It was freezing. It was still snowing, just like today. And went out onto the track, and I started pushing laps in my everyday wheelchair. Well, all the kids in the track team ran circles around me, literally. And that was my experience. That was being a part of my high school track team. So I persevered through that season. In Iowa, they were actually quite progressive at the time, and they had developed wheelchair racing events that took place at both, local district level track meets, but also the state track meet for both boys and girls. And so I competed in the events that were available for the 100 meter, 400 meter, and shot put. So I competed in all those events because those were the only events that I had. And I would go to the track meets, and although it was certainly a positive thing that they were attempting to be inclusive, it still wasn't very much fun for me because on the scheduling, the 100 meter wheelchair event would come up, and I'd line up on the start line, and the gun would go off, and I would race down the straightaway of the track by myself in front of an audience of people's bleachers. And of course, everyone would golf clap and pat me on the back at the end, and everyone was very proud that I was doing it. But as you can imagine, does that sound any fun? It wasn't that much fun. I was really only racing the clock, and I still was I felt like I was stuck out like a sore thumb. So it was very important to me. At the end of that season, May rolled around in the state track meet, and actually I had planned to quit. I had planned to go to this final event, and I had given it a go. I had appeased all these people who wanted me to do it, but I really wasn't enjoying it that much, and so I planned on that being my last hurrah in the sport of track and field. So we drove down to Des Moines, Iowa, and we went to the state track meet. And when I got there, getting ready to do my events, I immediately, within a few minutes of arriving, ran into several other high school aged women who were very similar to me. Most of them were wheelchair users, a few other types of disabilities represented as well. They all had these things called racing wheelchairs, and they were all playing the sport. And they were all cool, and I wanted to get to know them more. And we competed that day. We ran the same 100 meter and 400 meter, and I got, of course, blown away because I didn't have a racing wheelchair, I didn't have the right equipment, I knew nothing about it. But I met these peers that were awesome, and I wanted to hang out with them more. And for that reason, I started talking to them more and learned that there was actually an Iowa junior wheelchair racing team that practiced in Des Moines on Saturdays. And I was completely intrigued and wanted to check it out. So started to go to these wheelchair racing practices in Des Moines. It was a 4-hour drive one way. You would get up, my parents were amazing, get up at 4 in the morning and go drive to Des Moines for a 9 a.m. practice, stay for a couple hours, and then drive back to Northwest Iowa. So it was a whole day event. But I was so adamant that I wanted to be a part of it not because of the sport initially, but because of those other girls that I wanted to get to know. Because when I was around them, I felt so accepted and so confident and so much like myself. So that was the initial hook that kept me involved. It was not dreaming of being in the Paralympics or dreaming of winning medals or anything. It was that I made friends, and I wanted to continue to get to know those friends. So I continued to go to practice and acquired an actual racing wheelchair. It was a rental for the team. Started to learn how to use it. I was running in fences and walls and other people, and it was a disaster at first. But with some sport-specific training, eventually figured it out. And eventually continued to compete and just got a little bit better and a little bit better and a little better over many years. And I started to compete in regional events in the Midwest. And then learned that there was a junior national championships. I wanted to check that out, of course. Again, wanted to go with my friends to this event. So started to compete nationally. Again, not yet at a high level. It was still very participatory at that time. But started to get out there and see the world a little bit. When starting to travel to national level events, I began to get to know even more people with disabilities, especially women with disabilities from different parts of the country. Definitely started to see a broader lens outside of just my small hometown in the Midwest. And eventually latched on and really felt like I was part of the sport and really started to self-identify as an athlete. So that was how I initially got involved. When I was a senior in high school, things changed rapidly again, and I very much think it's important that when you're working with any mentees in that mentor-mentee relationship, it's so important just to simply tell people that we believe in them And something really important happened when I was actually a junior in high school that kind of emphasizes that theme. So I was competing, and I knew I was decent at the sport, really enjoying it because of my friends. And that year, the national tournament was in Mesa, Arizona. So I went down, Midwest kid, down in Arizona at this track meet. And that year, they were going to pick 5 guys and 5 girls to be part of a sort of development camp for the sport of wheelchair racing. And I had heard about this, I had absolutely no expectations. But at the end of that track meet, when they announced the people who were going to be a part of it, my name was listed. And I was floored and very surprised, but very, very excited. And part of that opportunity was going to spend a week at the Olympic Training Center in San Diego and get coached. Not yet a member of the US team or anything, but just to receive that coaching and be in that environment. And that was such a transitional moment for me because I went to this camp and suddenly just being in that environment, having national level coaches suddenly talk to me and obviously showed that they believed that I had talent, completely shifted my mindset from one of doing it just for fun, which was very important, to one of, okay, now I'm all in, I actually want to do this. I want to win, I want to compete, and I want to take it to the next level. And it was all, nothing changed. The only thing that changed dramatically was that someone said they thought I could do it. That was really the only thing that changed. My skill didn't change overnight, my equipment didn't change overnight, but my self-concepts and my own abilities changed overnight because of the people who chose me and said that they believed in me in order to have that opportunity. So continue to compete, and eventually this sport of wheelchair racing started to provide amazing opportunities, and eventually I was able to compete for the US team in 3 Paralympics in Sydney, Athens, and Beijing. And race marathons. Marathons was one of my big events. So even before I lived in Boston, I came to race the Boston Marathon. And this ended up being a huge part of my self-identity and really a whole first phase of my career in life. All because of those people along the way who told me that they believed in me and accommodated my skills and interests and that peer group that I formed along the way. So whether it be sports, sports was the thing for me, but it doesn't have to be sports at all. It can be whatever it is that you're passionate about and interested in. And our job, programs like Thrive as adults in the community, is to work with you to think about picking those passions and chasing after your dreams, and showing that we believe in you and that along the way you can make anything possible. So where do I find myself now? So eventually what brought me to Boston to stay, so I was from the Midwest, I spent some time in California, but what brought me to Boston now as a resident was educational opportunities. So I want to talk a little bit about how that sort of flowed in with what I was doing also in sports. So farm girl from the Midwest, when it was time to graduate high school, I had started to meet other people from around the country, and all I knew at that time, I didn't really know exactly what I wanted to do, but I knew I wanted to get out there and see more of the world. And I knew that I didn't want to go to the University of Iowa. It's a great school, but I kind of had these far-flung vision, and I wanted to see the world. So sports was such a big thing in my life at that time. I was looking into schools that I knew would facilitate a career as a student athlete. And at the time, the universities that offered those opportunities were primarily, not only, but primarily the University of Illinois in Urbana-Champaign and the University of Arizona in Tucson. And if you're a kid from the Midwest, which of those sounds more fun? Yeah, right. So I went to the University of Arizona. Yeah, Illinois was still cornfields and cattle and the smell of the cattle, layer trading, all of that. So I was ready to strike out. So I went down to Tucson, Arizona, and started my freshman year. By that time I knew I liked the life sciences. I liked biology and those kinds of topics. And so I declared a fairly general major along those lines. I knew that I was interested in healthcare in general mostly because of my mom. She was a nurse, and then she had worked for a healthcare system in the town where I grew up. And so because of spending time with her in the hospital and going to see her at work, I knew that was an environment that I liked. So upon arriving, I didn't necessarily declare what we call a pre-med major. That actually didn't exist, but I knew that that was something potentially that I would want to do. So that started, I mean, really, my freshman and sophomore year, my life was really defined by that student-athlete identity. And sometimes the busier you get, the more efficient you are, and so that was actually helpful for me, I think, because it kept me focused. And you know, I had training in the morning that would finish by about 8 or 9, and then I had class, and kept things ticking along and moving forward. So as I was going through my classes, I continued to really enjoy the life sciences, but I also knew I really liked people. And if you're an undergrad major and you're studying biology, which is what I was doing, you know, what you're often kind of mentored into is thinking about something like med school or something more along the lines of being a researcher, that kind of thing. And of those options, I felt like I really liked the human interaction, and that med school might be a good option. So elected to go that route and to try it out. Now, the important thing I think along the way is that at the University of Arizona, where I was, there was a really, really strong disability community. It's actually a school that has really, really strong disability student services and really strong culture of access. Part of that is the weather certainly facilitates it, given that it never snows. We all know how much of a challenge that can become. And so as I was going through and as I started to state this goal of wanting to go to medical school, no one ever said you shouldn't do that or don't think about it or actually that'll be too hard. People only said yes and how can we help you make it happen. And that was so incredibly important because certainly it was a big goal and something that, you know, in some ways I had some hesitation and fear. And had it not been for counselors, professors, people saying, sure, why not, of course. I don't know that I would have gone that route. And so as I was moving through, I applied to medical school, I got in and started down that road with my path of career in medicine. I went ultimately to California, Stanford for med school, and then when I was done with med school, made my way here for residency in the specialty of physical medicine and rehabilitation, based mostly at Spalding. So along the way, as I continued to progress in my career in medicine, especially when I was a medical student and then a resident and now working as a physician, I often hear from people who will email, who will send a message on Facebook frequently saying, hi, I'm someone with a disability. I'm interested in medicine. Do you think I can do it? Really, really interesting. A lot of it is just word on the street and people saying, oh, I know this person who did it. You should talk to them. Not necessarily a formal network, but sort of just one-off tips that students get. And when I talk to them, and depending on where they're at, what environment they're in, what their type of disability is, I often hear stories of people being discouraged. Not all the time, but sometimes. And sometimes it's based on their environment. They might have 5 people who tell them, yeah, you should go for it. It's definitely possible for you. And one person who says, maybe you should think twice about that. And it's always that voice of doubt that often makes students feel like maybe it's not the right selection or not the right choice for me. So I think it's so important, even if it's in an informal way, to continue to mentor other people academically, just as people believed in me as I was going through that course. And to be honest, there are certain parts of the country and certain schools that are more open than others, and that's certainly the case in medicine. It's probably the case in many different professions, whether it's law or business or the arts. And I believe really strongly that it's important to choose an environment where you're going to feel supported and people are going to believe in you. There might be a school 2 blocks away that would be really easy to go to, but if it's not an environment where you feel like you can thrive, maybe it's not the best choice. School is hard enough. It's a lot of work. There are a lot of challenges just from an academic standpoint, without having to then also fight battles of talking people into believing that you can do it. So you have to be in an environment where you'll feel empowered. So turning it around and talking about where I'm at now, and I think how that translates into our program here today. So I currently work, I practice rehabilitation and sports medicine at Spalding and Brigham. stayed really involved in the Paralympic movement is something that, although I don't compete anymore, it's part and parcel of who I am. I could never not be a part of it. So we continue to work really hard on opportunities for athletes with disabilities, especially female athletes with disabilities. At the grassroots level up to the highly competitive level, understanding that people have to have that entry point to be involved before ever dreaming that they could be an athlete for the US team, for example. And we're really working actually to carve out this niche in sports medicine as well that looks at Paralympic athletes and thinks about, what are the health benefits of sport and physical activity? How do we prevent injuries? How do we keep people going through their whole life? Whether or not they just want to play for fun on the weekends or compete for the US team at a high level. So it's been a really, really interesting opportunity to blend in my background as an athlete to what I do now in medicine. And certainly I think an example of how we carry everything, all of our experiences forward with us as we move forward in life. So in thinking about this theme of no breaks, I kind of want to bring it back to that. I'd love to hear, I'll finish in a few minutes, and I'd love to hear about your guys' perception of that. I think that to me, whatever area of life that you're in, thinking about how to keep those expectations high for ourselves and for society when we're interacting with people in the broader environment is so important. If I use the example of sports and sports health, I think that these opportunities really have the ability to impact individual athletes, but also our perceptions on disability and also access. So if we create ubiquitous opportunities for people to engage in not just competitive sport, but physical activity more generally, we're really opening up the opportunity for people to live healthy lifestyles, and I think that's really important. Some of the things that we're working on are, understanding that these opportunities can impact the individual athletes from the standpoint of confidence and self-respect and physical empowerment. But even more so, what do we do, for example, with health clubs and gym facilities to make it so that they're universally designed and accessible for all? I always say, how awesome would it be? They make a product now called the Crank Cycle. It's an upper body ergometer that actually looks very cool. It's very easy to use. And how great would it be if when you went into a YMCA, you could choose whether you wanted to do an upper body spin class or a lower body spin class, and that decision was up to you. The decision would be up to you, and not only you, but everyone. So maybe then your peers, your family, your friends would also want to do the upper body strength class as opposed to the lower body spin class. And I think thinking about physical activity from that standpoint of universal design is really important so that we can all participate and compete together at the end of the day. One exciting update that I wanted to share is that we're now having more opportunities at the collegiate level. The Eastern Collegiate Athletic Conference is one of the NCAA conferences that includes a lot of schools in New England. And they've recently passed what's called an Inclusive Sport Initiative, where they're going to start looking at collegiate level sports opportunities and how to integrate that into the NCAA system. When I competed, we were club sport, which was great. Obviously, awesome, the opportunity was there, but we certainly did not have the same access or the same feeling of equality with athletes that were within other varsity sports programs. So starting to create inclusion in that regard, I think, is extremely important, and also gives young athletes something to aspire to and dream about when setting their own goals. So those are my comments, and I'd really love to open it up to think about what this means to you guys based on your interests and goals. And I did bring a medal, you guys. We can pass around. Yeah.
Yeah, I think that was an incredible way to open the capstone conference. I myself love that Cheri's career with advocacy and her leadership in the disability community. And I think many of us probably feel the same way. But yeah, I would love to open it up to questions or comments. I'd actually like to start off by asking, if I know that you said that you were not necessarily so thrilled about joining a track team, but for those of us who may want to venture out into that field. We don't really see any examples of that in our schools, or maybe some of us are the only disabled students in our schools. Like, how do we take that step if we're feeling a little nervous or uncertain?
Yeah, great question. So, you know, at the high school level, I think that having opportunities that parallel one another is really important. And by that I mean, you know, having the opportunity to compete with your high school team, if that's something you want to do, should be open to you. And actually, there is legal backing to that now through the Department of Education, and so that's something that is a goal. You shouldn't fear bringing it up and bringing it up to the coaches and athletic directors at your school. And then in parallel with that, I think what's really important, I know it was helpful to me, is having that disability-specific mentorship. And I think that ideal is having both opportunities that kind of parallel one another. You know, it's hard to be successful in a sport when it's just you, and you're doing it differently, and there might not be specific coaching. But being able to access that coaching, potentially through evening or weekend programs, and then bringing that back into your school environment, I think is really empowering. And if anyone has questions about like where they, I know there's some folks here today from Western Massachusetts, for example. So, you know, we can certainly talk about like what the opportunities might be more local to you. In Boston, we have some fantastic adaptive sports programs. Spalding has a great program. There's programs in sailing and rowing, and starting up with track and field this spring, and sled hockey and alpine skiing. So there's great community-based programs. But I think just as important is how you then translate that into your school environment, if that's your goal. And just know that you do have backing that inclusive education is meant to also include sports, and that was defined by the Department of Education a few years ago.
Does anybody have any other questions for Cheri? Yes, in the back. Yes.
Hi. Would you be able to expand on your interaction with your patients from a doctor's perspective?
Absolutely. So it's been really interesting along the way, I'm sure you can imagine. So currently, my patient population is largely, it's a lot of people in the community, a lot of people in there, you know, anywhere in the range of like 30 to 60, for example, who want to stay active and might be experiencing some aches and pains here and there. My day-to-day practice is sports medicine, so I see all comers, not just people with disabilities, but also anyone who wants to stay active and lead an active lifestyle. So that's really phenomenal, and I love it actually, because I think people are often, sometimes people look their doctor up online. A lot of them will actually beforehand, but unless they dig a little deeper, they may have no idea that I'm a person with a disability. And so there's always that like there's frequently that little look of surprise, like when the door opens. But I usually just charge in like super confident and positive, and people tend to get over it most of the time, right? You know, very, very quickly. And then if people do dig a little bit deeper, it's actually interesting, because then they'll because it's a sports medicine clinic, they'll usually bring up like, whoa, that's so awesome. What was that like? Competing in the marathon. Then there's the other side of what I do, which is my background in residency was in physical medicine and rehab, and working at Spalding, both on the inpatient and outpatient side. And you know, I found that to be, it was actually a little mixed, because when working at Spalding, especially with those who have acquired newer disabilities and are making a big life change, I think often people need time, and oftentimes people aren't quite ready yet for this rah-rah empower message. People need a little bit of time to kind of work through their own emotions in those settings. And so I would tend to just be very, very laid back about it, and let people more so come to me frequently. Sometimes people are ready, and then it's a great opportunity to answer questions and to talk about, you know, all these similar themes of empowerment. But people have to come to that kind of on their own time, I find. You know, hastened by opportunities like things like community groups and peer mentoring programs and sports opportunities that create the potential for those positive interactions. And the last thing I'll say is I have encountered just a few times when people tend to have a bit more of a negative attitude and have a hard time getting over it. But it's actually it's a really small, it's only been a few people over my entire career so far. And I have to admit, it's often older people who may have grown up in a generation in which people with disabilities were not empowered at all, or very minimally empowered. And so I think sometimes when you're from a generation in which that was the case, it's hard to get over the thought that a person with a disability is not as empowered or physically capable or mentally capable of taking care of me as their physician. And so there's only been a few people who I've felt that kind of thought with. And that's probably not, I'm really not the right doctor for them, honestly, because it's a minority of people, and I don't know that anything's going to change their mind in those cases, to be honest.
Marianne?
Where do you work?
Currently I work at Spalding Rehab and the Brigham and Women's Hospital.
Where is Spalding?
There's a bunch of them. The main one's in Charlestown. And then there's outpatient satellites all through, mostly the greater Boston area. And there's one in Salem and one down in the Cape.
So what do you like? What is it like? Is it like what are the ages of people that are there? Like kids to adults?
It is kids to adults, yeah.
And like it's just so we have like people who like have been in hospital and another place for their parents.
Yeah, it's a little of everything actually. So if you look at the hospital itself, that's mostly for individuals who have had a pretty significant injury or illness and need rehabilitation in order to get back into their lives more fully. And then there's another whole section that is more of just outpatient services and just community that is working people throughout the course of their life to stay healthy and have access to programs and be empowered.
Is there something like
Yeah, well, so at Spalding itself, it's very what we call interdisciplinary, meaning that there are people that work together from varied professional backgrounds. So there's doctors, there's nurses, there's therapists, physical therapists, occupational therapists, speech therapists, recreational therapists, and then there's of course, a myriad of people who support those efforts as well. And so we all work together, and that's sort of the essence of what we do is working together to best empower people both physically and
I have a question. So, all of us are either, we're not all just one thing, right? We're not all just a student, we're not all just disabled women. And, being a physician, American or Paralympian, how do you wear all of those hats and do you ever feel like too much or like do you ever feel pigeonholed? Like, how do you balance all of it?
Yeah, great question. Just like anyone does, So I think that in terms of day to day, it can be a challenge, certainly I think for any of us to think about, certainly creating the time to take care of ourselves and our personal lives, nurturing our relationships, if you're married, nurturing a partner or in a relationship, taking care of yourself from the standpoint of making sure you have time to get ready in the morning and do what you need to do, exercise a little bit, stay active, eat healthy, all of those things. And it's all a matter of balancing to make sure that you can carve out enough time to take care of yourself and be whole and happy as a person, so that then you can really strike out in your professional life and be ready to go at your best when you then have those professional interactions. So for me, it's definitely tricky. We're all busy, and I'm certainly the first to say that I'm a busy person, but certainly try to just maintain that balance to the best of my ability. And I think it's important to note too, there are seasons of life for all of us, and so I am a Paralympic athlete, but I don't compete anymore. And my time in the day is now allocated to my work as a physician and my personal life. I exercise now, not nearly as much, but I do it just enough to try to stay in shape. And that's okay. I don't need to go out and race marathons anymore, but I still carry that experience with me and those memories. And that's okay, you know, it's okay to have different things.
Are there any other questions? Stephanie?
Like you said that you work at Squamish Rehab. I actually am a client at Squamish Rehab, and I have never been to a hospital, which is great people, you know, I do physical therapy. They do a lot of this.
That's awesome. Yeah, I encourage anyone to stop by. It's also a great example of a very universally designed environment where individuals with varied types of disabilities really have a lot of freedom of movement, very open, nice environment, just to come see it.
Any questions or comments? Yeah, in the back.
Thank you very much for coming today. Enjoyed your story. There were a number of times where you had to step out of your comfort zone, and it sounded like it hard, you know, I remember the race, you know, in junior high or whatever. But, so hearing some of the words of courage and bravery, I'm wondering, you know, how you know, continue to step out of your comfort zone, how you overcome those people that put those seeds of doubt in your mind, etc. So what are some of your lessons learned to help kind of overcome those internal challenges?
Great question, yeah. So I feel like I step out of my comfort zone all the time. So certainly it was the case back in elementary school and junior high, especially with the whole sports piece. But it's still the case now. And I think stepping outside of your comfort zone, especially if you have an opportunity that you might feel is something that you could do, but it's going to really stretch and challenge you. I think it's an important thing to do because that's how we grow, is by thinking about what that next level of opportunity might be, even if it might not be completely known to us, and we might have to go a bit out of our comfort zone. But for me, I think it's changed over the course of my life. I think when I was young, what really enabled me to do it was the people around me and who believed in me. And that sounds cheesy, but it's so true. Because, you know, at the end of the day, if there were 2 naysayers and 3 people who believed in me, it enabled me to listen to the people who believed in me. And or the people that I had the closest bond with, like my parents, or my coach, you know, the coach on the high school team, I can't even describe how much I owe him. Because despite the fact that people might have even given him flack, or the other athletes might have said, what's she doing here? He didn't care, and he believed in me. And he was very down to earth, and he just said, let's just get this done. And that enabled me to hear his voice more loudly and clearly than other people who may have doubted it. So I think when I was young, stepping out of the comfort zone was mostly about having that support, external support from people in my environment. Now, I mean, it's still a theme that comes up every day. You know, people may ask me to do something, ask you to do something I don't entirely feel comfortable with, but I know it's an open door of opportunity. And I do think that, you know, I've been enabled to have a bit more of that within myself, but that took a long time to develop. And it took a long time of trying and not being successful and learning, you know, which opportunities are the ones worth pursuing. No one succeeds at every single thing they do, and that's the case for me as well. And there have been some times when I might have, you know, academically, for example, extended towards something that I wasn't sure about, taking a class, tried a clinical rotation that ended up being challenging, and I didn't love it at all, and it might have been a bit of a fail. But being able, again, with the support from people around me, to redirect and get back on course towards something that I knew I could enjoy and be successful at was really important.
Any other questions?
Did the middle make it around words?
Oh, yeah.
As long as you keep track of it. That's my husband. He's smart too.
Yeah,
You know, there's so many pieces of what you talked about. You kind of mentioned this, and this helped me to move forward. It was so important as a turning point, and I know it's probably very hard to say, you know, what was kind of, if you had to pick the most important variable. You mentioned the friends. You know, you mentioned that finding what you were interested in and not just being pigeonholed into an office job. You mentioned the people, you know, who believed in you. You know, was there sort of one of those kind of that was very key in who you are or helping you to?
Yeah. I honestly think probably the most important of all that was my parents and the fact that they never, that they had expectations. Because I think so early on that created a certain mindset in the household that then carried forward. And even then after like when I went to college, knowing that if I called them and I had like, you know, done something dumb or not got good grades or, you know, gone up my credit card bill to an exorbitant amount, like done something that wasn't responsible, I knew that it wouldn't be well, that's okay, honey, you know, it'd be like, that was not okay. You know, and knowing that there were no, I had two siblings, and there were no differences. I mean, they might have said there were because I was the youngest, so they always make fun of me for being the spoiled young, the spoiled youngest in the family. But I think from the standpoint of expectations, I think that it was the same. And so starting that mindset very young is critical. Although, of course, at the time, when you're a kid, you don't think about that. You just know what the people around you teach you. And so, for me, that was probably the most important. That then you kind of trickle through all different other areas of life. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Yeah. And
I guess I'm interested in the time and we're about to wrap up, but we're going to be hearing from Cheri later on, and she'll also be sticking around for the lunch too. So again, as I mentioned before, please use this conference time as a networking opportunity because what else might you have the one-on-one chance to ask questions, something like Cheri or any of our other speakers as well. So again, a round of applause. So really, our next speaker probably needs no introduction, as many of you probably already know her. But over the past couple of months, in honor of this year being the 25th anniversary of the Americans with Disabilities Act, Holly Flanagan has been leading the charge on a really neat and interactive historical project. So without further ado, I'm just going to let her talk more about the activity with you. So here we have Holly Flanagan.
Okay, I'm going to use the mic because we are still being watched on Google Hangout. And just in case you're wondering what that looks like, when you get home, you can look on it. See, you can watch it. Is what I meant on YouTube. So before we get started, it's very hard to follow a speaker like Cheri, who did an absolutely eloquent and fantabulous job talking about her journey as an empowered woman. But we're going to, over the next half hour, talk a little bit about how the Americans with Disabilities Act affects your generation, the quote, ADA generation. But before we get started with that, I want to mix it up because I know you guys have been sitting for a while, and I want you to sit in a different spot and introduce yourself to somebody who you don't know at all or you don't know very well right now. Once you found your new partner, because we're going to get to talk for a lot of different things over the next half hour, please find a seat so we can get going with the next part of the presentation. All right. Now, just so I can tell who in the room has already resettled and found a new person next to you, raise your hand or make some noise so I can know when it's time. Has everybody, well, hopefully you're raising your hand because you've resettled. You've met somebody new this morning, which we know we're going to do all conference long. I've repositioned myself, so it's kind of shifted towards the left of the room. So who here has heard of the Americans with Disabilities Act? By some noise or round of applause? Who's here? All right. That's good, because as Sandy says, and as everybody here knows, I work at East Fields as the Youth Services Coordinator, and I also get the privilege of engaging in different advocacy programs. And it's a passion of mine for people with disabilities to speak out and to change the world. Because as Cheri said, there should be no breaks, we should be doing it, and your generation, our generation, the quote hashtag ADA generation, we're going to get to that, is actually changing the world. And the whole world is counting on us to make sure that we go out there and that we get the jobs that we want, we meet the goals that we want, and we make the impact in the world the way that we want it. Because it is true, generations before this, ours, didn't have the same opportunities as we have now. So before we get really started, because we're going to have a lot of opportunities for you guys to share what you feel about how the Americans with Disabilities Act is being used right now in 2015. We're going to get opportunities for you to give ideas on how it can be better enforced or better celebrated or better understood. But before we do, I want to give a little background into some disability history. Another passion of mine. Because there isn't a lot of discussion around the history of people with disabilities. And what is discussed in the public is pretty sad. Do you agree or disagree? Agree. All right. Sometimes they kind of talk about us like we're burdens or like we're somebody else's problem. And there isn't a lot of awareness around all the contributions people with disabilities have made over the last 25 years and even longer. So I'm going to show a very, very, very short video that highlights some of the major achievements in the Americans with Disabilities Act, but not just that, but within disability rights, like the 504 Act and other accomplishments that have been made in history for people with disabilities. It's only 1 minute and 48 seconds long, and then we're going to get to the real fun part. We get to hear from you. Miriam's really excited, I'm really excited too. So, Desi. I guess you're right. Yeah.
Desi, where are you? What am I doing?
Oh, you're not really just kidding. Are you playing the video or did I put it over there? It's over there. See, that's what Desi knows. Give her a round of applause.
That's why you're in charge.
It's this one.
Oh,
sorry. Okay. See, we're pioneers, everybody. Not but just mentoring and disability awareness, but for leading participation online. So I do need to stand here. Somebody can tell me how to do it. Because it's now on the video. Oh no, I did it. The projector's not off. I know. Never mind, I have the live thing on, but now I can't. Sorry for the technical difficulties. Oh, it's on. I think we just need to turn the lights off. So we'll turn off the lights. This is a really short video, but hopefully it can be used as a starting point to get the conversation going about what's happened in the past for equal rights to people with disabilities, what's happening now, and then let's talk about what's going to happen in the future. Oh. It's not a lion.
I mean, we are pretty fierce, but not.
Oh, you don't have to.
Well, it's disability rights movement. Not a lion. All right, this is why I knew Desi was going to have to be in charge of this. Give it a round for Desi, our technical.
Oh yeah, whenever there's a computer issue in the office,
It's really true. And Michelle was in the audience somewhere.
And we can also go to Peter Mahoney.
True. There's many people. I'm not calling Flanagan now right now.
Want to tell everybody who Peter Mahoney is?
We can. It's your dad. And do you want to, we're killing some time?
What?
Since we are killing some time, quick little, do you want to briefly share that while we're waiting? Right, we'll do that after. With an ever-growing group of young people with different disabilities. All right, wait, we're going to pull it back. That they weren't being treated the same as everyone else. Okay. They desperately wanted to go to school. All right, so here we go. It's only 1 minute. And yes, you see me in there. And that's because one of the things I'm doing, like I said before, is trying to make young people be proud of sharing advocacy and demonstrate leadership. The disability rights movement formed in the years following World War II, when an ever-growing group of young people with different disabilities recognized that they weren't being treated the same as everyone else. They desperately wanted to go to school, get jobs, and raise families. They had a difficult time doing any of these things, partly because many able-bodied people thought that they couldn't and didn't even want to live full lives. And so this group of young activists decided to do something about it.
Disabled people feel that there is nothing else that we can do at this point but come to the streets and show the American public why we need their support and how we have a right to be able to work and raise families and get on and off the bus and on and off trains like everybody else. And that's what this is all about. Freeing our members of society.
Their story, often overlooked, spans decades. But this video will introduce you to it. It describes a long, hard fight that is still not over. What began after World War II as individuals struggling to survive turned into a collective fight for equal rights by tens of thousands of people with disabilities. Their determination forced the signing of the Americans with Disabilities Act, one of the most far-reaching pieces of civil rights legislation in history. What that is a taste of a longer video that was made for young people just like you to be leaders in your own schools. You know, it's right, that's into the eye. But the longer video talks more about what the struggle really was to legally get equal rights, which might seem like a little confusing. It kind of makes you scratch your head, right? Because I know everybody in here, we live with disabilities every day. But believe it or not, generations before us, people with disabilities were often extremely isolated and often weren't able to participate in the world the same way that we can. They had no rights to reasonable accommodation. They had no expectations to go to work or raise a family. Who here in the video saw a woman being pulled in her wheelchair into a van by police? Did anybody see that?
Me, yeah.
Good. What that was showing some protests. There was a lot of protests that needed to happen for people with disabilities to even get the attention for laws like the Americans with Disabilities Act to be passed. They did protests around public buildings, around public buses, and sometimes they used metal chains to literally chain themselves, their wheelchairs, to the public place that they wanted access to. It really was a long struggle of protests and of activism, and we were extremely lucky because in 1990, the Americans with Disabilities Act passed, which was 25 years ago. And who here was born around 25 years ago or less? Anybody? So if you were born after 1990, raise your hand. You were born, so yeah, so most people in here seem to be around 20, am I right? I'm having a hard time seeing it. It was around like 20, young ages, 8, 16, what else? How old is everyone else? Even though I know you guys are forgetting. 17, 22, and I know there's some mentors in the room like me who.
You should know my age.
I do, but I forget. But there's other people in the room like me who are about 9 or 10 years old, maybe in their teen years, maybe a little bit in earlier childhood with the Americans with Disabilities Act passed. And the reason I'm bringing up our ages is because myself, because I was only 9, I wasn't really going out in public, when I was 6, 7 years old. I've always been aware of handicap parking spots. What about you guys? Have you always been aware about handicap parking spots?
Yeah.
Okay. What about you guys? Have you always seen curb cuts or ramps onto the sidewalk?
Yeah.
Sometimes.
Sometimes. What about you guys? Have you always felt that you have the right to access a public bus or the MBTA?
No.
So I'm getting mixed reviews, which is good, because usually when I do this presentation, people know nothing about the Americans with Disabilities Act. You guys, right when we started this, all knew about it. And it seems like there are some curb cuts some places. Sometimes you can confidently get on the bus or train, but sometimes not. And that's pretty crazy, because it was 25 years ago. It was basically your whole lives ago that a law passed that protected you to access public places, like the sidewalks, like buses, like trains. And that's crazy that it's taken 25 years to build a ramp. I mean, my dad built a ramp in my backyard. It took like, maybe 25 hours. Doesn't it seem like taking a long time? Maybe, sort of. It does. Okay, so this summer, and I'm going to get to questions, and because I really know you guys probably have a lot of questions. I'm going to get to questions in just 1 minute. But this summer, we're going to celebrate the 25th anniversary, which is great. It's great that the Americans with Disabilities Act has been around. I know for sure I used reasonable accommodations in college so I could get in and out of the dorm. This was a while ago, because I've been out of college for 10 years now. But I could go to the dorm, I could go to the cafeteria, I could get around. And I know if I was born 25 years before I probably wouldn't have had those opportunities to go to college and to get an education and to get a job to be able to speak in front of all of you. So a lot has happened, but there's still a lot to be done. So to celebrate this summer, Easter Seals, which is an organization, as many of you know, has been around for almost 100 years. Can you believe that? It really, I know, which is kind of crazy.
Who started?
Oh, we'll get on to the details about that. Wikipedia knows a lot about who started Easter Seals. It was Kirk, yep. Kirk was around 100 years ago. So, 100 years ago, as Kirk knows, it's a really long time. And I know there's many different Easter Seals programs that change with the times, that come. Some of them are in Chicago, some of them are in Boston, some of them are in DC, some of them are in Iowa, some of them are in Connecticut, all different places out there. And they have done an amazing job of empowering a lot of people with disabilities to get out there and to get confidence and go get jobs and raise families, just like people had to fight and risk getting arrested for not very long ago. So to celebrate that Easter Seals has been working with youth for so long, we figured we'd make sure everybody in the ADA generation, which is you guys, okay, come together some way to say, you know what? Enough is enough. It is time that the Americans with Disabilities Act is understood by everybody, and that everybody understands what a reasonable accommodation is. So no matter how they do it, they're able to reach their dreams and get the job or residence or any type of role that they want to get that they can get. But who here knows what a reasonable accommodation is? Good. More than half of the room. I'm impressed. But because there are people watching on Google Hangout and YouTube, and not a lot of people in the general public know what a reasonable accommodation is, does anybody want to try to explain what it is? You don't have to. And you can use your own words. And remember, this is all about helping each other out, peer mentoring, bringing this conversation together. So, okay, we can help each other. Marianne, you want to give it a shot?
Can I repeat the question?
What is a reasonable accommodation?
Can everybody hear me?
Yes.
A reasonable accommodation is something that can help people in schools or apply for colleges, get a job.
Okay, that's great. Let's give everybody. All right, let's get some other guesses or attempts at explaining a reasonable accommodation. And do we have a mic that can move? Because I know that's the only way they can hear us on the computer. Tanya, I think there's a mic coming to you. Okay, they might not hear you online, wait, let's talk about it.
Can everyone hear me? Yeah. Okay, so reasonable accommodation is something that you would need to perform the essential tasks from the job. That's like what the ADA would say. So it's as long as it's something, as long as they don't have to go out of their way or spend a lot of money on getting that accommodation and it needed for the workplace or for school, that's considered a reasonable accommodation.
That was a very, very great explanation, round of applause. Does anyone else want to try to explain what a reasonable accommodation means to them or what they think it might mean? Does anybody have a question? Oh, there's somebody, sorry, I can't really see past the first row. Yeah, let's do the microphone just because, as I keep referring to what you just said, but some people really are wishing that they were here in Waltham near Boston. Some people are watching online and they want to hear us too.
So the way that I see a reasonable accommodation is if a person is unable to do something, they can accommodate their needs.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so that was a good one. Others? So, oh, there is somebody. See, I'm glad we have eyes everywhere. Okay. It's coming to you.
Oh, okay, thank you. Well, I'm not really sure what a reasonable accommodation is, but I think it's like strategies, they have to give you strategies to do, you know, like if you're having a hard time, you know, like working, and they can give you a strategy to do it in case of your ability.
So what everybody said is true, but it literally means what's reasonable for you, how we do things anyway. It's the law for the rest of the world to accommodate how we do, okay? So for example, if we read text with a text reader, it's against the law for people to say, nope, nope, you can only read with your eyes. Does that make sense? Sort of? What? Sorry, I do. Yeah? Actually, Haley, if we can just it does. So everybody does things differently, okay? And remember, this conference is all about us learning from each other, us kind of celebrating how, you know, we all have disabilities and supporting each other with that because it is such an isolated topic. So we all make accommodations or adapt to how we do things every single day. But it really is this law, along with other laws, that protect our right to do that. But here's the catch. There isn't like a police force out there making sure people, you know, abide by the Americans with Disabilities Act. If we, the ADA generation, don't stick up for ourselves under the protections of this law, no one's going to care. I know it sounds kind of rude, but it's true. Most people with disabilities right now are not working, okay? That doesn't mean they don't want to be working. It's because there are still a lot of barriers. Like we heard over here, maybe there's a couple of sidewalks that aren't accessible yet. There are a whole lot of people who don't understand their rights under the Americans with Disabilities Act. And it really is kind of our job to be leaders and make sure that those around us understand that we really have the same dreams, goals, and desires, whether we have a disability or not, and that there are legal protections to help us. So, with all that being said, now we're going to get more into the activity of this. Because like I pointed out in the video, over 25 years ago, people had to protest for equal rights and access to participate in the communities that they wanted to participate in. Now we have the access, but we don't have a lot of acceptance. So we figured we'd bring the chains out again. Because, you know, people have been getting away for a long time with not really including with people with disabilities. Do you agree? But sometimes people with disabilities should be included more in public things? Yeah, maybe. Anybody against that?
I'm not chaining myself to anything.
You're not chaining yourself to anything, Haley, I promise. Nobody's getting arrested.
Okay, but let's just say I'm not chaining myself to anything.
But we have a campaign that ECCL's Youth Leadership Network, which is a free program, I know a lot of you participated in it, is kind of leading. And under this table, I'm gonna ask Allie, yeah. Under this table, there's a box. Ooh. And it's not metal chains. But what it is a bunch of different colorful pieces of paper. And what we want to do to celebrate the 25th anniversary of the Americans with Disabilities Act this summer is to build a paper chain that has different people who filled out different links, all connected together to show how many people accept that they have a disability or accept that other people have a disability and value reasonable accommodations and value what the Americans with Disabilities Act has done for our entire community. And the goal is, and that's 4 months because July is, coming up pretty soon, we'll have linked so many people that this paper chain will go all the way around the Boston Common. So people will start to talk about it. People will go, hey, what's going on? What are they doing? And they're going to see how we came together and contributed to the community to make sure that everybody knows that they have a right to reasonable accommodation. Okay? But right now the chain's probably only like half a mile long, which sounds big. The Boston Common, I've heard, is, depending on how you measure it, is 88 miles long. So we have a lot of work to do. So right now, we're hoping that everybody can come and get a link. And on it, you can write your name, and you can write what you value about the Americans with Disabilities Act, or how you use reasonable accommodations to reach your own goals. And when you're done with it, come right up to here by this sign, and we're going to staple all the links together. And we're going to see if we can go all the way across this room. So please, don't be scared to do more than one link. If you can do more than one link, that's great. And you don't have to do them in quick. For the next few minutes, we're going to let you do some links, and I'm going to be up here with my stapler to connect them all.
Dancing.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah. Okay, so there's some questions about what you should be writing. And what you should be writing is your name on one side, but on the other side, what you value about the Americans with Disabilities Act, or why the Americans with Disabilities Act is important to you. Or if you want to even go even deeper, you can write about how you use reasonable accommodation if you are a mentor with a job or something like that. So, if you have any questions, please come on up and.
You can hashtag how we thrive and thrive MACon, and you can also hashtag ADA generation. Yeah, no, awesome. Please share this on social media. That's awesome. Well, I'll be on Twitter and Instagram tonight.
Yes. Hey, Lee, do you mind grabbing that sign over there that has? No, we're gonna have each person come up. All right, so once you're done, and I'm gonna just look for Debbie's okay. We're gonna be right here. Can you see this side of me?
There you go.
No, we're not collecting. It wasn't there. Bringing their own up. You don't have to, but yeah. Okay. All right, we ready? So people are finished. We got the stapler right here. Each person is going to come up right here and be connected. And remember, because there are people watching online, maybe or not, if you would like to say something about the American Disabilities Act, then you can when you come right up. Perfect. All right, so, sorry, stop. So the first person has come up to get linked, okay? And if you want to read what's on your link, you can. Do you want to read what's on your link? No? All right, so we got the first circle to link on. Let's get some more links up here. Cool. Perfect, just been linked. All right, do you want to read what's on your link? No? All right, so we got one.
Yeah, sure.
Okay. Okay, that's fine. Well, it's not going to, you can only read what's on it. All right. Okay, next. Do you want to read what's on your link?
I think I wrote.
Okay, we got 3. That's awesome.
So excited.
All right, guys. Thank you. Do you want to read what's on your link? All right, now we got a line going. Okay, it's getting pretty long. All right. All right. You want? Oh wow, we got some people have like 4. That's awesome. A lot of people value the American Disabilities Act. All right. Do you want to read what's on your link? All right. So just look right into that camera right there. And go.
It says, I value that it requires buildings to be accessible. So, yeah.
Awesome. Thank you, Mandy. All right. Carolyn. Yeah. So we'll get you linked. Marianne. Marianne. All right. So you're going to take okay. All right, so this is great. So we're kind of forming a rhyme behind Marianne, and only if you want to, you can read what you wrote on your link, so we can all kind of learn from each other. All right, so Marianne.
The ADA is important because people in wheelchairs can get around easily.
Excellent job. Good job, Marianne. Pretty good, right? Okay. All right, so now you go back. Next person wants to go. All right, Jesse, you're up. You want to read your link? All right.
ADA is important to me because it helped me to move to another country by myself.
We can clap for people. All right. And then go to the next. Oh, sorry, Olivia.
The ADA has helped people with disabilities like me be able to get into college and have equal rights.
Awesome. Very, very good. And Olivia and Marianne, if you just go this side. All right, Olivia, you have over here.
This is Cheri Blauwet.
Just been linked. All right, who's next?
The first one, I said independence and living goals, and then I put singing and dancing.
Awesome values of the ADA. Give it up for Stephanie. All right. All right. All right, Jen, you're up.
Okay, I have a few. I have access to public facilities which allow me to have social interaction and interact with friends. I have access to competitive integrated employment. I'm able to use reasonable accommodations as a means to allow me to have access to higher education.
Very good, very good. Good, thank you.
All right, guys. Watch right in front of you.
Very good one, thank you. All right, next.
I have like 80 of them, they're only gonna read one. I have the right to have a desk in my college classroom.
Yeah, you definitely have a right to have that desk. Very reasonable. Oh man, okay, wait, now I gotta catch up on stapling. Hold on. I'm glad we all value the ADA very much, it's great. Okay.
Want me to staple for you? Okay, thank you.
Yeah, you want us to do the stapler? Okay, all right. Okay. You want to share yours? You don't want to? Okay, you can now. Oh, that's cool. ADA generation, how's it going? Okay. You want to share yours?
Actually, this is Louis Burns, who actually learned the rest right now. But, he wrote, I value that the ADA allows people with disabilities to reach their potential by not holding them back because of access limitations.
Very good, very good. Great work. Now with a pile.
All right, so I said one, but I can make more.
Okay.
80 miles?
88 miles, I know.
I can make some more. I live in 88 because it's important to get into the community to be able to show people my responsibilities.
How dangerous because.
Awesome. Very good, very good.
Perfect, right? No, you're good. You can hand them to me. Do you want to?
I'll just mention it.
Yeah.
So the reasonable accommodations help me daily in my collegiate experience as well as internships and my job search.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, I'm giving somebody else.
That's fine. Do you want to flag? I like this. Sure. All right, the ADA means freedom.
Mine is my music in school.
Sorry. Awesome. Very good. Hey, Mary, she spelled it right. Good. Very spelled better. Awesome.
I value Americans with Disabilities Act by having access to public transportation.
Awesome. Very good.
I said the ADA helps me to use my laptop with notes in school.
Awesome. Perfect. Thank you. And if we just move forward a little, because we're like,
So this is yeah.
You ready? I said walking crossing signs
Large print in public places, especially in school, because sometimes their books are really small print. And traveling. Yeah.
I value knowing that every person can participate in life to the same degree that everyone else.
If there's anyone in the room that doesn't want to share it, but there's still links, just bring them on up now so we can see how far we've built the chain so far in our conference. Are there others? It looks like Jeff only has a couple more links, and we'll see how big it is. And then I know we have to get going to lunch very soon. Well, not lunch, but the next portion of the morning. But this chain is going to be on this table throughout the conference. And let's try to set a goal for ourselves to think about how we can use reasonable accommodations in our own life. I challenge you to talk to each other and learn from each other, your peers, how maybe reasonable accommodations could help you in future jobs or in college. And let's, if you accept the challenge, I don't know if you accept the challenge, but if you accept the challenge, do you think we can make the paper chain go across the room with enough links through the whole weekend? Do you think that that's a reasonable challenge? Yeah. Reasonable? Okay. So right now we have about more than halfway of the room to go. Okay? But again, it's a challenge for you throughout the conference to think about how reasonable accommodations or how living with a disability, how you can succeed. And I really encourage you to learn from each other. So thank you very much for participating in the ADA Generations Paper Chain. And for everybody on School Hangout, thank you very much for watching. And we know that we'll be sharing it on YouTube, since I'm not sure there's a ton of people. But if there is anybody watching, please tell us that you are by using the hashtag #HowWeThrive, hashtag ADA Generations, so that we know that you're out there and you can be part of this awesome movement of empowering people with disabilities. Thank you.
Thank you.